and former Attorney General Eric Holder joins me now. It's good to have you, General. What do you view as the stakes of last night's race, and what the meaning of the Democratic victory, or the, Democratic allied victory was?
I mean, I think you have to look at it on two levels. It means that for the state of Wisconsin, you're going to have a Supreme Court filled with justices, or at least 4 of whom will, I think, look at the facts, look at the law, and use that to make determinations about the constitutionality of statutes and just deciding cases. But beyond that, I think what happened in Wisconsin reverberates beyond the borders of that state, and was, as Elon Musk said, a referendum on the Trump-Musk alliance and what it is that they have been doing to our country as they try to reorder our society. And what people in Wisconsin said is that, no, we're not going to put up with that. We're not going to first let you buy a seat for their preferred candidate on the Supreme Court. And second, that we're not in concert with or not supportive of what you're doing to our country.
You served as Attorney General under Barack Obama. It's a really difficult and really important job. And you served in that position, and I think it's fair to say at a different moment in this country's history, vis-a-vis the Justice Department's relationship to the White House. The Trump administration basically says there is no independence to that body. They might as well be White House staff. We tell them what to do, who to prosecute, who to not prosecute, who to unprosecute, which line attorneys get fired in violation possibly of civil service protections because they have political leanings we don't like. As someone who had that job, what are you thinking as you're watching this transformation of the Department of Justice into an explicitly partisan power tool of the president?
I'm very concerned about that. I mean, obviously, I'm disappointed, I'm disgusted, but I think the American people need to be very, very concerned, alarmed, scared by this possibility. If you empower the Justice Department in the way that they are doing, to make it basically an arm of the White House, a political arm of the White House, and empower the people in the Justice Department, the Attorney General, for instance, to say, you decide who you're going to prosecute, and prosecute people on the basis of, political disputes, that's something that is really, really awful and really scary. Beyond that, though, it's also a protective thing. We've had this whole thing about Signalgate, and the fact that the Attorney General is saying, well, I'm not going to look into that. It's like, really? On the basis of what do you make that determination that there's no basis for some even preliminary inquiry to see exactly what happened there? And now we're seeing indications that there were maybe 20 other signal calls with regard to national security matters. And to think that that's not something that you're going to investigate, that's clearly a political determination. So it works both ways. I'm concerned about the Justice Department going after people for political reasons. I'm also concerned about the Justice Department protecting people for political reasons.
Pam Bondi has said, she sent these Justice Department lawyers, one of the things they do aside from prosecute, right? There's a civil division that is in court, litigating on behalf of the government. And those litigators have really pushed the boundaries, I think it's fair to say, in a lot of these court cases. They seem to be dissembling in front of judges. They seem to be hiding the ball, maybe outright lying about information they know when it comes down to whether they're actually obeying judges' orders, whether they know whether flights are leaving. They've faced this unprecedented slew of basically rulings from district court judges across the ideological spectrum saying what you're doing you can't do. And you've got the Republican Party, Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and the Attorney General saying the judges need to be impeached, or there's an inherent Article 2 power to ignore judges' rulings. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, first off, that notion that there's some kind of Article 2 ignoring power, I don't see that any place in the Constitution. And then beyond that, this is another thing that I think should terrify us as Americans. The judiciary is a co-equal branch. It is meant to be a check on executive power and on legislative power. And if they don't operate that way, if judges are not allowed to operate in that way, our system will not operate in a way that's consistent with our founding ideals. I'm very concerned about the threats that they make, the way in which they characterize judges who come up with decisions that are inconsistent with their desires, where they go after judges. I mean, I've never seen an administration, Republican or Democratic, that has done the kinds of things that they are doing with regard to the judiciary. And, dismissing career people within the Justice Department because they wouldn't do the bidding of these political folks is another thing that is extremely alarming. And it is something that I think the American people now are starting to pick up on. And I think that's one of the reasons why you saw the margin that we saw in Wisconsin, and frankly, the margins that we saw in Florida as well.
Yeah, let me play the sort of major benefactor of that Republican loss, the sponsor of that loss, Elon Musk, richest man in the world, who went there, handed out the checks, donned the cheese head, spent a lot of money. And here he is in Wisconsin on Sunday talking about judges. Take a listen.
We're obviously seeing like some crazy stuff in D.C. where it seems like it's like any federal judge can stop any action by the president of the United States. This is insane. Like this has got to stop. It's got to stop at the federal level and at the state level.
Aside from what a good speaker he is, what do you think of what he had to say there?
Well, I mean, that's nonsense. I mean, there is something to be said for the notion about district court judges issuing these nationwide rulings that have nationwide impact. But, man, they weren't complaining about that when they were going to district court judges in Texas, for instance, and going after things that the Biden administration was trying to do. They have this situational concern. Now it's being done to them, and suddenly I understand there's a bill pending in the House about doing away with or somehow modifying the ability of district court judges to issue these nationwide rulings. So I think that his concern only exists when judges are doing things inconsistent with his desires.
One of the other places we've seen this administration sort of attack, I think it's fair to say, the rule of law isn't just the Department of Justice, isn't just pushing the envelope on due process, but it's actually targeting various law firms. And I know you're here just purely in your personal capacity, but this administration has gone after a series of large law firms with what to me are almost preposterously unconstitutional attacks on their basic First Amendment right to freely associate. He's gotten deals out of some of them. There's others that he's gone after. I mean, what does that do to the culture of law, to the actual practice of law in this country at the highest levels, if the president says, if you represent someone with an adverse interest before the government, we will find some way personally to sanction you?
Yeah, the stakes here could not be higher. If you try to chill the ability of lawyers to go and defend any client, because, again, you have a political problem with the person, that goes against the rule of law, goes against our judicial system, the way it is supposed to be composed. Now, I think that there is a responsibility on the part of those of us in the legal profession to push back. And those firms that have cut deals so that they can, I guess, keep their profits at high levels are not going to earn the respect of other lawyers, and I think will be judged harshly by history when people look back and ask, where were you in 2025? What did you decide to do in 2025? But this is something that I think we've got to push back on in every way that we can. I hope that lawyers, law firms will stand up and push back against these executive orders that are facially and clearly unconstitutional. I mean, if you sue, you're going to win. It is as simple as that.
Final question for you and Barack Obama were close before you became Attorney General. And I think two things that something that you have in common is kind of never too high, never too low. You seem like calm, cool customers, generally. Given that, how freaked out are you, scale 1 to 10, about how bad things are, about how bad these first 2 months are?
Oh, I think I'm at about an 8. I mean, and that's pretty high. I am concerned about what this administration is trying to do. It's not just about trying to protect, students on campuses or trying to find waste, fraud, and abuse. What they're trying to do is reorder our society and to come up with ways in which they take the potential opposition areas and try to just destroy them, whether it's federal employees, whether it's judges, whether it's universities. I am very concerned about that, and I think I'm heartened by the fact that the American people, the Democratic Party, are finally awakening and putting themselves in a position to be in opposition to this in a very strong way.